And we're live with the amazing Lenka Koppova. So hello, Lenka, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me.
So you are, well, slightly more than an avid reader. You're quite an extreme avid reader. You read a lot of books a year, and also English is not your first language as well. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I'm slightly obsessed with books. Just tiny little bit.
Okay. Do you want to get straight into the books, or do you want to talk about how you got into so much into reading?
Well, my journey into reading was very early on obsession. The moment I learned how to read, my thing was discovering that books are fun. And I do remember spending most of high school, instead of studying, just reading books. Back then it was like rom-coms and novels and fantasy, then went more into fiction and detectives and psychological thrillers. And in the past couple of years, it's mainly been personal development, business, marketing, and lately neuroscience books. But it doesn't matter what the book is about. Yeah, I just devour them in like massive amounts.
Yeah. Okay, shall we get started then?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari. Probably mispronounced the poor guy's name.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but his books are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. So why did you pick this book then?
Well, this book has been one of those books that you see people reading, you see people recommending, you see it around, it's influential. And it really is a wonderful summary of the history of humankind. It goes through where we started, as a species. It poses lots of questions. It goes through lots of theories. And obviously for me, one of the interesting areas in there was the looking at the gender and how across the world, across different societies that we've evolved, how we've evolved to be the society that we are right now with, the patriarchy and the focus on the gender roles that we have and how far back in history we can find the first signs of that, and what are the theories why it evolved in the way it did, and why most of the theories don't make any sense that we still actually don't know.
So what was it that the gender side that particularly appealed to you about this book, or was it a more wider point?
No, it was just overall the interesting thing to understand the humankind, understand our history. And for me, I read this book somewhere around where I really got into neuroscience and understanding the human nature. So then the anthropology part of it, which this book is pretty much a book about anthropology, looking at how we've evolved, how we became who we are, and how it ended up being that the only us Homo sapiens are here around, why there are no other human species around, even though any other animal, living creature, thing in this planet has multiple subspecies existing. And we're the only ones who don't. So there's been lots of things, be it, I've always been interested in politics, even though less and less so lately, but there's still some underlying interest in the politics and the different way of how we can build societies and how we connect with one another. Because then again, for me, it ties back into some of the other books that I'm obsessed with, which are all about neuroscience and how we're wired inside of our brains.
Yeah. Well, there is a little bit of an ordering. You did give me titles between the sections, which I'm thoroughly lost in the translation of this. So it kind of starts off with self-helpy books, and then eventually it gets to health books at the end. And I think there's a few books in the middle about something else, which I've forgotten about, but I'm sure we'll mention it at the time.
Yeah, I naturally kind of, my brain goes like, you ask me, oh, which books do you want to talk about? I'm like, well, I have some like personal development and general life books, and I have some marketing and business books, and I have some health and well-being books, and then I can find some books in between. So yeah, there are kind of the categories that my brain is organized by itself, like just naturally, so it just organizes things.
Yeah, I've got an enormous list of books from this show I need to organise into categories, because people have recommended a lot of self-help books, but also a lot of health books and a lot of just fiction books, and I have no way of organising them. Anyway, shall we move on to the next book?
Yeah, let's bring in the next one.
Essentialism by Greg McEwen, which has been recommended
This
before on
one.
the show. Oh, so
This
why
one.
pick that then?
This book was actually recommended to me by a mutual friend of ours, Nicole Osborne,
Oh, okay.
who I have a wonderful relationship with, business friend, and we every now and then go for coffee or dinner and chat, and obviously books somehow always come up in my world. Books always come up as a topic. And she recommended this book, and it really struck me. She was mentioning that she keeps rereading the book, coming back to it. And it was at a time where I was searching for meaning in a way and simplifying things and finding my own angle at lots of things. And kind of the book Essentialism, that is kind of its subtitle is The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. It's a wonderful framework for life, business, marketing to help you prioritize and help you really reflect on what is important to you, helps you build your own blueprints and frameworks for the making decisions. And from there, it really allowed me to explore more of what life has to offer, be more open to all the things, and yet be comfortable with then putting boundaries and restrictions and really stripping down and keeping only the most important things, the things that I really want to say hell yes to, and it pass all the criteria that I can kind of consciously choose to put it against, and then just leave the rest behind and be happy.
Yeah. So did you apply lessons from this book straight away, or was it more something you just keep in the background and as a something you keep coming back to as a kind of something to steer you back onto the path?
It's definitely a book I keep coming back to, be it a specific chapter, be it my notes, because I did read this book quite strategically, or I listened to this book first as an audiobook, quite strategically, like taking lots of notes. And I do go back to my notes quite often because there are quite a few helpful frameworks that I implemented some of them immediately to really look at more things that I will say hell yes to, and having some standards for either be it choosing clients, be it choosing activities, be it prioritizing things I want to focus on in life. And I do go back to it whenever I'm faced with a decision, or I feel like there's a little bit too much happening in my life and I feel a little bit all over the place and unsure about the direction, unsure if a decision, how to make a decision, or if I'm making the right decision, if I'm splitting myself too thinly or keeping too narrow of a focus, or if the new opportunity is right for me, then I'll kind of go back to the book, some of its lessons, and be like, oh yeah, this is helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we go on to the next book, talking about essentialism? We've got quite a few books to get through here. It's like
I know.
but that's a good thing. Right. 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, which I hadn't actually heard of before this. So why did you pick this book then?
So this book, lots of books come through recommendations because I talk to people who also like books. And this book actually came out quite recently. It's a very recent post-pandemic, is it post-pandemic or straight pre-pandemic release? And it's similar in a theme to potential essentialism. There might be some overlays. It has a subtitle that is all about time management. This is not your typical time management kind of a book. And the book starts very strongly with a statement that we're all gonna die. And it puts it in perspective that the whole title, 4,000 Weeks, is the average length of a life. That on average, we all have 4,000 weeks to live. When you start thinking about it in this perspective, the number is very different to like, oh yeah, we have 90 years, whatever. But then when you say, well, halfway through the year, only have 2,000 weeks to go. It is a very different, again, similar to essentialism, principle to how to live, how to make choices, how to prioritize things in life, with the perspective of that life is short, time is limited. And Oliver Burkeman is actually a guy who's obsessed with productivity. He had or still has a column in newspaper talking about productivity hacks. So he understands time management, time optimization, planning. And this whole book is all about, well, that's nice, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is to really know what is the most important thing in life that you really want to do. So these two books, Essentialism and 4,000 Weeks, in a way are very similar in the theme. And I would highly recommend this book. This has been one of the top recommended books in the past couple of years that I kept talking about because it has such a massive impact on me. Again, just bringing in the realization that life is short, and in life and business and relationships and marketing and all the aspects of my life, that I do need to make, I think, better decision to be more strategic and conscious, more present in my choices. So yeah, I love that book. It's beautifully written.
Yeah. So it sounds like, not meaning to get you to which baby to pick to kill, but it sounds like you prefer this over essentialism in a way. Right? Is that the
Yeah,
right
in a
assumption?
way, yeah. I think in a way, it really, essentialism is great in terms of helping you be productive, helping you be focused. But this book, the 4,000 Weeks, really puts it in perspective with like life is freaking short. Like you really like it talks about the shortness of life quite clearly, and it does have much bigger impact, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get on to the next book, and I think we're getting into more businessy books coming forward. To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink.
Yeah.
So why this book?
So I've been on a journey of embracing sales.
Yeah.
As a marketer, we always know that marketing and sales are important, that they need to go hand in hand. And yet, as a marketer, I'm living in the comfort of marketing, of advertising and content and the soft and fluffy things, and kind of staying away from the sales. And often in marketing, sales is seen something as negative and bad and scary. To sell means to be sleazy and salesy and annoying, which this book kind of breaks it down nicely. It reframes selling as moving people, like persuading people, changing people, not mind, but getting them on board. And it has a really great structure in it reframed the old school ABC, always be closing, to something more modern and more based on actual science. And again, we go back to my favorite thing. There's neuroscience in there, there's behavior science in there. There is obviously going back to some of the old school books and literature on this topic, such as Influence by Lenka Koppova, or however its Italian name is pronounced, but Capaldi or whatever. But it is really simple, quick, practical book that talks about how to be better at selling without feeling sleazy. And one interesting fact that I've learned in there is that as an introvert, we often think that extroverts, our polar opposite, are the better people at sales. We often see them as more outspoken, outgoing. And yet this book, and obviously the research is based on, proves that people who are exactly in the middle, who are ambiverts, who are not on either of those extremes, are actually the perfect salespeople.
Yeah.
As an introvert, we tend to be a little bit too shy, a little bit too nervous, where extroverts just don't listen, they just talk. They just go full speed, and that's no one's favorite. So it's interesting to really then get into the persona of descriptions and understanding who is the ideal salesperson, and then seeing, well, how can I lean more into that in my interactions?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on to the next book, which is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. So why this one?
Another one of those books that keeps making rounds. You've heard of it. If you've been in business, if you've been around, you've heard of this book. I already see the visual. It has such a visual of like a fish jumping from one aquarium to another one. And people might have heard all the lessons of this is where the phrase work in your zone of genius have been coined or kind of really made powerful, because Gay Hendricks talks about, the levels of, you are either working in the level of incompetence where you don't know what you're doing, level of competence where you know what you're doing, level of zone of excellence where you're pretty good at what you're doing, but other people are good at it as well.
Yeah.
But if you really want to thrive in business and life, you really want, to make a big impact, to build a thriving business and be successful across the board, then you need to find what is your zone of genius. And this is where a business book for me starts linking very closely to some of the personal development, spiritual health, and well-being books, because he touches on the inner pressures or the energy that we might have locked inside of us when we do something we don't fully believe in, when we're not fully in our zone of genius, doing the one thing that only we can do our way to our fullest potential. If we're just afraid, if we're avoiding it, if we're just, pretending that there isn't a stronger calling within us, then it can show up in physical health, in mental health, in actual symptoms. And that's one of the books that for me was a massive surprise because I came to it. It's a business book. It's a business book about scaling, about progress, about leveling up. And Lauren is like, it is, but it's so much deeper, going into your own psyche, your own journey, your own emotions and stuff like that. It is pretty cool book that I've reread a couple times since going through it first time. So again, one of those books that if you read it, you will very likely be coming back to.
Yeah, it's interesting how some of the best business books can overlap with personal development books to the point where sometimes you can't really tell which genre they fall in. So
No, exactly. Like this could easily be put in the healing
yeah,
section because there is so much in there that talks about health and well-being and healing and being feeling good and living healthy and happy lives. But also it is all about building a business and leveling up and having a wonderful career and taking a big leap to reach the zone of genius and really do the work that you are meant to do.
yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Yeah,
So
well,
why
this
this?
is an OG, I would say, marketing book. This will definitely be kind of the go-to marketing book for anyone who's starting a business, starting to learn about marketing. It is it is more like a workbook. Like it is very practical, very simple book that talks about, how to clarify your message and get your message across so that your ideal customers will listen. And it's, if you've ever heard of marketing presented in a way that your customers are your heroes, the hero's journey, and then us as providers, we're the guide, then this is very much likely where those things are coming from, because the framework is very simple. Our ideal customer is the guide, they have a problem, the hero has a problem, we come as a guide with a solution, and we help them overcome it and achieve. And it brings a lot of movie narratives and traditional storytelling in there because it is a story brand. It's bringing storytelling into marketing and positioning and communication. And it then goes very practically into building a tagline, working on a website, writing emails. But the first part is very much figure out your positioning, figure out your messaging, figure out very clearly what your message is.
So how much did you learn from this book, or did you feel that this book was just communicating what best principles in a way?
So as a marketer, it's something that I've known before. It's something that I've used before. But the book has a wonderful framework. It's so practical. It has worksheets. And it is a book that then I started coming back to and potentially picking up some of the exercises to then work on with clients and recommending the book to clients if they want to, go further by themselves, to recommend as getting a broader understanding of branding and marketing. But I do love tapping into the book for some of the examples, some of the frameworks, some of the strategies to really pull out the most meaningful, most impactful message.
Okay, so let's go on to the next one. And the next one, The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanner.
Yeah, so that's a recent addition to my obsession.
Yeah.
I have been more and more, and it's similar to the book about selling. I've been interested in the art of selling, and coaching has lots to say and lots to advise in terms of knowing how to listen, knowing how to guide a conversation, knowing how to really get those insights from our conversational partners, from our potential clients, and knowing how to steer the conversation to obviously help them, but also make an impact and potentially convert them to clients. And the art of listening and art of asking questions, those two things have been a thing that I've been really interested to learn about. And be it at conferences that we might have get together, people are mentioning these things, we're talking about listening, and it's nice to say, oh, listen more, listen better, and ask better questions. But how? Like, I've been one of those people who did struggle with asking questions. Always when I go to workshop or talk, I'm one of those people, I will not have a question in the moment. I will be cycling back home, and halfway through I will be like, now I have a question. So I really wanted to start working on my ability to ask better questions. And this book pretty much has 7 questions to ask and explains why these 7 questions are powerful and how they can be modified. It is designed for coaches to progress with coaching questions, but it can be used in life, in business, in friendships, in sales. And it is beautiful, kind of very simple, practical read to go back to again, tap into, look at some of those questions and be like, how can I start implementing this question more into what I do?
So it sounds like it's not just for coaches, in your opinion, then it's a wider business audience. It will be a useful book.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's, it is about how to say less, ask more, and change the way you lead. And again, leading, being a leader, it's a very broad term. Yes, you can lead as a coach, you can lead as a CEO, you can lead your community, you can lead your family, you can lead your friend group. So it is applicable to anyone who wants to learn how to communicate better, who wants to learn how to ask better questions and then actually listen. This book, highly recommend.
Okay, right. Let's talk about money. Born Rich by Bob Proctor.
Yes. Well, this is an old school book. And part of me exploring this book has been my journey into money mindset this year.
Yeah.
It's been learning my own money blocks and my own limiting beliefs and my own kind of obstacles that holding me back. And this book, and I think one of the books coming up, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, were 2 books that if you ever talk about money, they will come up. But at first I was skeptical because they're old school and they're written by middle-aged white dudes, which again, fair enough, but different world and potentially different challenges. But I was really pleasantly surprised by the book, how, again, intuitive, how much more there is of spirituality and energy. It's not just this rah, hardcore, just money and finance and investment, this boys club. Yeah, some of the examples are very much like a boys club. But it is very much about energy and belief and the things that surprised me about this book.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a related book next, which I'm not even sure if you meant to put it as a different book, but which is You Were Born Rich
That's for me, there was a new thing which I didn't realize. I started reading or listening to this book, and then I realized it's actually not a book. It's a recording of the talks and the session and the seminars that Bob Proctor and his team used to do. So they were running it in live with audience, delivering. So there's multiple people narrating it, delivering it. And it's
Yeah.
taking the book Born Rich, which is the original work, and then applies it. And the book is wonderful, but the recordings of the live sessions, this pure gold, because then they bring people who've been through the programs, people who experience it, people who've done the work, people who follow the path, and their experiences. And it is very entertaining and engaging because you have multiple people delivering it, and you have the audience clapping, and it's like Bob is a great presenter. It's just so much fun. Just listen to him. So that's where I wanted to add both of them, because the book itself is wonderful.
Yeah.
But then the recordings of the seminars, they're a different level.
So should people read the book first and then listen to this, or listen to this and then read the book? Which way around should they do it?
So I would say read a book first and then listen to it. I did it the other way around, because then I was confused. I'm like, this is not a book. Why there is a book? So listen to the book first, you will get the basics, and then this will help you really implement all those lessons from the book.
And were there any lessons that stood out to you as like, yeah, that really makes sense to me?
So there are lots of lessons. There's lots of things. Part of it is just about the belief. It's all about simply believing that anything's possible. It's visualization. Pretty much for me right now is the person who really made visualization really relevant to me and really practical and meaningful, rather than this just woo-woo kind of a sweet things, having pin board, having like a vision board, but he made it so practical and real, and bringing in all those kind of, again, emotions, feelings, and obviously still doing the work, doing the work, but the power of belief, the power of simply setting our mind to what we want, reminding ourselves to regulate that what is what we want, and then going out and doing the hard things to get what we want, then anything is possible. And it's something that for me was new when I was reading it. This kind of anything is possible, just believe.
So you've got a cut out private jet stuck to the wall now of yours.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to another iconic book. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And believe it or not, I had to check. You are the first person to mention this book on this show.
That's incredible, because this is, and again, one of those books that I was very skeptical going into it, because it is an old book. And I was like, but it's still recommended. It's still, if you look at, and I do follow a couple, money mindset YouTubers, young people, millennials, Gen Zs, my generation, making wealth. And I was like, really? Like, there are no better books than this? And when I got into it, I was like, I know what you mean. Because it is similar to what Bob Proctor is talking about, where you need to have this passion, you need to have this desire to really want to know what you want to achieve. And then there is, again, the idea of self-suggestion, that if you keep repeating it to yourself, you have, talk positively to yourself, if you're focusing on what you want, if you're then doing more of what you need to be doing, then anything is possible and you can shape your reality. It really goes back to, the thoughts we have, the words we say really shape our reality. In this book, even though it's so old school, and I believed before I read it that it will be very dry and boring and very kind of a hardcore finances, it is beautiful to read. It is very impactful even in today.
Yeah. The funny thing is, though, we actually had a conversation on LinkedIn about books that other people rate and you don't rate as much. To some extent, I read this book after reading so many other books that were similar that I was like, oh, yeah, I can see why it's such an influential book, because it was written such a long time ago. But everything in it, I'd already heard somebody else say in another book. But you are right in as much as, this is where loads of these ideas came from. Even things like mastermind groups came from Think and Grow Rich as a concept.
Exactly.
It's such an influential book.
If we really remember the year it was published and how long it's been around, how many people read it, implemented, adjusted it. What is the thing? Like this came first, then came Brooke Proctor, then came others, and they keep evolving and adding their little bits. And Proctor often quotes Napoleon Hill, and he gives him the credit. He always says that he didn't invent anything; he just consumed so much knowledge from so many different things, packaged it up. So if you read all of those newer things, then of course this book will not be such a breakthrough. But because for me, I knew I wanted to kind of start with this book. I do have the obsession with starting at the beginning. Like I have the obsession that I want to go to the original source. If I'm supposed to be learning something, if I'm supposed to, it might be difficult because the older books often are harder to read. But I am kind of a purist that I want to go to the OG first, and then I'm happy to add on the modern ones. And there's lots of books that reflect on this book, be it from Jen Sincero, You're a Badass, Making Money, or lots of other books that actually kind of touch on this book and draw from it. But I still think that it is a good read even today.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get on to another book that might have had some influence from that. We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers.
Yeah. So I had a long journey actually to this book.
Yeah.
I've already read all the books from all the men from all the old school money mindset people, and then there is this new wave of female money mindset experts and millionaires and influential people. And this one specifically was recommended by our friends and colleagues, Andrew and Pete.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Rachel Rogers was supposed to be speaking at Atomicon. And they were, remember where this really hits me to like, oh, maybe I need to read this book.
Yeah.
They were asking in a Facebook group to be like, do you want to be a millionaire? Like, and I was like, no, I don't want to be a millionaire. And like, obviously, because they've read the book and they understand Rachel's perspective, they were like questioning. And every time someone like questions my opinion, I'm like, wait a minute. Should I change my mind? Should I think differently? So I went into this book. I was like, okay, I don't want to be a millionaire. It's never been my goal. I just want to live comfortably, easily, happily, and then read this book. And to start with, it is a hard pill to swallow because it is written by a person of color. It's written by an African-American woman, a young one. And it goes through all the inequalities between not only gender, men and women, but also people of different race and ethnicities, even till today, and obviously going through historical things, and still picking up wonderful female role models that achieved incredible things when no one believed that they can do anything worthwhile. No one wanted to give them a chance without education, without capital, without support, against all the rules and against all the societal pressures and the stereotypes, still made something incredible, including Rachel. So for me, this book has been eye-opening in the terms of I understand now her thesis of that we should all be millionaires, especially women.
Yeah. Okay, so are you a millionaire now then?
No, but I'm on my way and I'm following.
You're working on it, yeah.
It's worth it. You deserve it. And she has some great practical frameworks. Again, there's lots of mindset in there. There's lots of things we're helping you to overcome your inner saboteurs and overcome some of the imposter syndrome, and then go out and do bolder decisions. Just put yourself out there. And again, there is a lot of good sales advice in there as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're now switching on to soon you're going to become a millionaire, but you want to live a bit longer. So I think that might be what we're about. Which is Outlive by Peter Attia. So
seriously, like if there's one book out of all of those that I'm talking about that I think everyone needs to read, and this is it.
Okay.
This is it. Because it is a book about living as happily, healthily, as long as we can. It is all about the science and art of longevity, but not also longevity to live as long as we can, but live as healthily as we can. And it is kind of, again, a sobering read to start with, because Peter Attia is a medical doctor. He's a trained professional. He's a neurosurgeon, and he had a wonderful career in medicine before he decided to leave the medical area, because he just couldn't understand why it works the way it works. That medicine is great at fixing the quick, urgent illnesses, but is not so good at prevention, at preventing illnesses from happening and taking measures. And Peter Attia is a big proponent of taking quite drastic measures, and he's a proponent of starting with getting ready for our older years. He always calls it your kind of the final decade. He always thinks like, what do you want to be capable of doing in your last 10 years of your life, no matter when it might be. But what he always comes back to is, well, you need to start now. And I mean, people in my age, in 20s and 30s, you need to start now. And in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you need to be not in average health, but above average health, if you want to really have the health that you imagine having. And because one of my ultimate life goals, life dreams, is to live as happily, healthily, and fulfilling life as I can. But specifically because I love hiking, I have this vision, and I've met them on one of my hiking trips. I've met this group of 75, 80-year-old ladies climbing mountains over, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 meters. I was out of breath. I was done. Struggling, and they were like, no, easy peasy going. I'm like, I want to be you ladies. This is what I want to be. This is what I'm striving for, and I have it in my mind. And this book really helped me to. It is practical. You have really good training plans and explanation of how to prevent cardiovascular disease, how to prevent diabetes, how to prevent cancers, and it does again touch a little bit on the energy, which is interesting. Lots of the books somehow end up going a little bit more spiritually than I would have imagined. Even medical books, that this seems to be a theme in the books I read. There's always something underlying. And it's maybe because I am more open to it these days.
Yeah.
That I kind of see it and accept it, rather than previously I would probably be like, well, just some nonsense. I'm not going to pay attention to it. But really, if you want to be healthy, if you want to live a good, long life, this book.
So was there anything that particularly, not meaning to spoil the surprise of the book, but was there anything that you particularly looked at, discovered from this book that you were like, oh, I didn't appreciate that? What was the most shocking revelation in the book?
Well, there was a lot of things in terms of, again, the prevention that, for example, Alzheimer's is one of those illnesses we don't actually have a cure. We don't have a medicine. We don't have anything to manage once we get there. So for people there, we now know there are certain genes in our body that give us more of a chance to have it or not to have it. But that prevention is the key, and that we can prevent so many things. So many things can be prevented by combination of nutrition interventions and exercise. That it's actually not a rocket science, that it's not that difficult, but it requires consistency day in, day out from early on to have a regime and to really want to get yourself into above average health. But that lots of illnesses that people struggle with, especially going to older age, be it for women, with bone density and with joints and all of that, are obviously all these illnesses that are so popular. They're so common with autoimmune diseases, with all the cancer and everything. It is really scary to look around you how much sickness and illness is around. And then reading this book and realizing how much power we have to heal ourselves with, yes, a lot of effort, but actually just effort.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to something else. Another health book. Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor.
Yeah, and this for a while before I read Outlive, this used to be my go-to recommendation to anyone and everyone.
Yeah.
Because again, it is such a powerful book in talking about the most simple thing, our breath. You think like what there is to talk about for a full book. And it again, I love it's a very storytelling driven book. Like James Nestor talks about his own experience. He puts himself through experiments, which I love. Like for me, part of my obsession with reading all these health books is I like being the guinea pig. So I like them bringing in certain modalities, bringing in certain patterns, experimenting, and he makes it very practical to go through those experiments. But ultimately, it goes back to being healthy and living a long, happy, healthy life with the simple power of understanding how our breath works and understanding how we can tap into the power of breath, be it slowing down or increasing, be it taking big inhales or taking big out exhales. How simple just these couple modalities can make. And even going back to history of understanding of how the people in ancient civilization, be it in India or around the world, how they knew this, how they understood how the breath can be so powerful. And somehow we've forgotten about it, or more likely the pharma industry took over and we started focusing so much on the pills and the chemicals. That's goes both for this book and Outlive. That there have been lobbyists and there have been groups of people who have all the interest in trying to get us on the quick wins and quick fixes with couple pills here and there. And lots of the research money has then been diverted away from some of the simplest, free, easily accessible tools for healing for anyone. Because again, there is so much in this book that proves that we can heal, again, ourselves from so many things by just simply breathing better. And that's for me this incredibly powerful lesson.
Okay. Well, I don't know if the next book's going to be the third book that you used to recommend to everybody until you read this book, but we'll carry on. The Mind-Body Prescription by John E. Sarno.
So that's a recent discovery of mine, even though I've heard of Johnny Sarno before and I've heard of his books and I kind of understood. For me, this has been the culmination of lots of this reading going into really the energy. And this book is hard to swallow for someone who's very rational, very logical, very scientifically driven. And again, the only reason why these books really speak to me and I can kind of lean in and trust it is because John Sarno is a medical professional. He has a long career of actually working with clients in his clinic and done clinical studies. So it's not just some sort of a charlatan pulling things out of his thumb. But his whole philosophy is that it's all psychological. It's all in our head. All the pains, all the illnesses, like he is very extreme in his statements that pretty much 90% of all that's wrong with us, all the illnesses, are just caused by suppressed anger. Childhood trauma, suppressed emotions, again, the energy that's bubbling up within us needs to go somewhere. And the main lesson for me was what John Sarno says is that for our body, for our brain, emotional pain is so hard to deal with that our body just channels it, funnels it. So any kind of a back pain, any kind of an ankle pain, joint pain, be it then the autoimmune diseases, even cancers, pretty much anything and everything in his books, in his experience, could be caused and could be healed by just releasing the anger, going through a bit of therapy, doing the inner work, but then you can heal things. And there's so many, again, examples of people going through surgeries after surgeries, and the pain keeps coming back. The pain just keeps jumping from one thing to another. An interesting statistic is that no matter the age, there's so much that is physiologically wrong. Like there's so many systematic issues with all of us.
Yeah.
But the difference between those who have pain and who have some illnesses and troubles versus those who don't is the emotional health, is the lack or abundance of emotional traumas and suppressed anger. So just the fact that, from his experience as a research, that he will take healthy people with no pain, put them through all the scans, and they will figure out that they should have joint pain, they should have back pain, they should have this, but they don't because, well, they're emotionally healthy and they either didn't have much of a trauma or they went through it, they healed it, they processed it, compared to people that there isn't physically anything wrong, or there could be, but the point is that everything is in our mind. And it's still something that I have a couple of friends who are very much like scientists who study biomathematics, who go deep into DNA, who go deep into cancer research. And this is one of the books that I'm like, I want your opinion on this, because for me, I'm kind of like open-minded to accept that this could be true, because if this is true, this statements, this approach, this perspective that it's all psychological, that again, it's not easy to heal, but it's doable. Again, we can do it ourselves or with a little bit of a coach, therapist support, rather than going through years of chronic pain, fatigue. One thing that I think it's either in this one or I think the book coming after will be the second book that I mentioned from him. Would it be?
I'm trying to remember. Did you?
Might be.
I'm not sure you didn't recommend the second book.
No.
But,
Well,
we'll discover it in the future.
Yeah,
Also, I've screwed up the order of the next couple of books, so it might be the book after the book after.
Yeah.
Anyway, so.
But I think I did add to the list his other book, which is Healing Back Pain, just focusing more specifically on the back pain. And in there, again, it just is so surprising to see that he even does not recommend any physical therapy to his clients. He says, don't do, like, of course, be physically active, do things, but don't do anything to fix the body. Just the body is good, the body is healthy, the body is perfect. You don't need to do anything to compensate physically with the body. All you need to do is the mental work.
Yeah.
And then, yes, of course, be active, but don't do specific exercises to heal your back, to heal the painful tissue, the painful area. Forget about that. Just focus on your emotions. And I'm like, that's wild.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get on to the next book, which I think might not be the right order, but who cares? Let's see how. The Good Life.
The Good Life. Yes.
Lessons from the Longest Study of Happiness by Mark Schultz and Robert J. Waldinger.
Yeah, so this is the famous Harvard study of happiness.
Yeah.
And this is a book kind of going through the study. And the study has been going on for, I think they now have 3 generations of people documenting their lives and trying to learn what is, how can we be happy? What is the key to happiness? And number 1 lesson from all of that is connections. It's people.
Yeah.
It's finding, meaningful relationships, prioritizing your family and loved ones and family, and again, overcoming some of those traumas, learning how to work through some of those emotional things, and communicating and learning how to communicate. But yes, there have been a couple other lessons from the longevity study, but ultimately, if we want to be happy, then we need to be connected with other people.
Yeah, I think it's one of those lessons that people put on the back burner too much, really. Okay, let's get on to the next book, which might be the one you were talking about. It might be different. Social.
And this book is nicely linked to the previous one, even though I read them completely in related order.
Yeah.
They talk about exactly the same thing, where this one is a bit more scientific. So social, why our brains are wired to connect, is a neuroscience book about our brain and how we're wired. But again, Matthew Lieberman have made lots of studies to prove that we are hardwired for social connections, that our brain is fully designed to be immersed in social interactions with other people. And one of the most interesting facts I still remember from this book, even though this one is the one I read a few years ago actually, it's that if you don't think of anything, if you allow your brain to rest, the things you're going to think about are people. It's you, yourself, the people around you, other people, but we always, the default of our brain is to think about people, us in relations to people. So that's the premise of then all the studies and all his theses, is that, well, because the brain automatically goes to thinking about people, be it in the past, present, or future, it is about connecting, then it's fair to say that our brains are wired to connect. And again, it leads to lots of studies that do prove that being connected and being social and having healthy relationships and being part of a tribe are important things for happiness and longevity.
Yeah, I think it is something that so many people miss out on, including myself at times. I think and in modern society, we all tend to live much more alone than we used to. We don't have the big caves. Almost, I'd have no. Of course, we have no idea how cavemen used to live. Whether they lived, cavemen and women lived in big caves, or whether they were just isolated groups and they happened to meet occasionally. But I think the evidence is more towards the big cave full of a tribe rather than as we are now in little isolated pockets.
Yeah, they lived in bigger groups. Even in history, we are now at the extreme of very small families, very small units. Even just a couple years back, and even it is still visible in people who live more on the village and the rural life compared to the city life. And obviously, city life is, again, something quite recent for us to live in such a big anonymous places compared to living in our tiny little villages and in our little communities. And I can see the difference between living in a city and during the pandemic living back home in a farm in the middle of nowhere. How much more communal life is there of, you chat with your neighbors, you exchange vegetables, you help each other, you know about each other, you can go if you don't have an ingredient or you're missing something. And you just shout over the fence and someone comes, and you spend time on almost daily basis just having drink, going for coffee, bringing food. And it's the food and sharing and supporting each other that it's part of being social, it's part of the human experience.
Well, that nicely segues on to the next book, The Good Gut, by Erika Soderberg and Justin Soderberg. Probably mispronounced Sonnenberg even. Sorry, I do apologise.
Yes, so this is one of the examples. I picked only one out of the selection of my good obsession, gut obsession books, which once, there is a narrative that I've been through the moment I discovered neuroscience, going through trauma, going through emotions, and then going through gut. And somehow it's all related. And obviously then having the other arm of my obsession, which is genuinely just the health and well-being. And this book is actually a nice kind of a connection of both of them. It says taking control of your weight, your mood, and your long-term health, which again, all those things, something that I want to do. And it is the journey of rediscovering that in our gut, we have all these wonderful microbes that technically we have more microbial DNA than we have human DNA. So technically, if you look at percentages and the trillions of tiny little creatures that live in our gut, we're more microbe than we're human. And really this realization and learning that, what we eat, how we eat it, And again, just the immunity that we get because of these things, and how these things that impact our emotions and health and well-being and mental capacities, how really it is linked. What we eat is linked to how we feel and how we behave and how we think. And this is one of the, I think, best books I've read on this topic. I've read some books that are more steered towards a specific diet. They want to give you specific nutrition. There are more books that are go through more of the breakdown of all the different microbes and go very scientific into different microbes and this is a very practical book. It's actually a really good book for parents or people who raise kids and have influence over what kids eat, because there's lots of chapters in how to start early on doing the right thing and building the right microbiome for people. But it's super helpful and easy enough to read for anyone who simply wants, again, to get all those things that this book promises, to be at a healthy weight, to have a good mood, and again, to really take important steps towards long-term health.
So it sounds like you've read quite a few books on the gut microbiome, which seems to be the trendy. So why did you pick this particular book then?
This one is very accessible. It's the book that's easy to read, and that's doesn't seem the most scientifically verified, rigorous. Again, Eric and Justin, they do lots of studies, and they're both in this industry. They're proper like doctors and scientists, but they don't follow a particular diet, or they don't try to steer you into one direction, where some books can be a lot more, either keto driven or vegetarian driven or something, where they are very open to anything and everything. These are just some guidelines, and it is a very accessible book. Some of the other books that I've read about gut have been harder to read, and I did not enjoy them as much as I really enjoyed this one.
Okay, let's go on to your final book. Why Woo Woo Works by David R. Hamilton.
Yeah. So one disclaimer: if you're going to listen to this book on Audible, get ready for a choice, because David Hamilton is Scottish, and he decided it's a good idea to narrate his book himself. And even though I usually don't have issues with accents, it took me a while. It took me a while to get to his accent and to really be like, what? What are you saying? So that's a choice. So I don't know, obviously you can get it in print. I did get it on Audible. I did get an audiobook, and it's okay. It's good. Like, he is very entertaining and he has a good voice, but it is a choice to narrate it yourself with such a thick Scottish accent.
Yeah.
But this is probably the book that pushed me the most out of my comfort zone. And that's kind of why I wanted to read it, because I have been getting more into the woo-woo world, into, again, we've talked about lots of the energies and things like that kind of seem to appeal to me in lots of these books, even when I didn't expect it. So I knew that this book will push me. And it starts very softly with going through, the scientific rigor and all the proof that meditation works and that Reiki and energy healing works, and going a little bit more obscure with the fact that crystals are real and crystals work, which I was like, I can see some of the science in there. And then going even further into telepathy and things like that. But again, everything with scientific rigor, everything with looking at studies, breaking down the studies, understanding how the studies have been developed, how the studies have been run, how the studies have been interpreted. So looking at potentially what might have been misinterpreted, what wasn't. But ultimately, this book goes through all sorts of different woo-woo modalities, starting from things like yoga and meditation, which are now wide acceptable, and we know that they are becoming very much mainstream, to things like Reiki and chakras, which is becoming a lot more popular and accepted, to things that even for me have been out of my comfort zone, and I'm still like questioning if I understand it, if I believe it, things like crystals.
Yeah. So have you got an enormous crystal in the back there now? It's like,
I don't have a crystal, but I started picking up more rocks. Right.
oh, okay.
It's not a crystal, but because it's interesting how then I made a connection between this book and Bob Proctor's book about money and Think and Grow
Yeah.
Rich, which often part of the crystal is just the power of belief and a reminder. And often the crystal can serve as just this token that you have in your pocket, you have somewhere, and you simply believe in it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily written in this book, but there have been some interesting studies about the power of positivity and power of positive words, where some of those experiments, and you might seen them on TikTok and YouTube, people do those experiments at home. And they are kind of related to what this book is talking about is if you cook rice and you put rice into 2 boxes and you leave them at the counter at exactly the same temperature and everything. But on daily basis, you open one rice and you talk positive to it and you give it positive energy. And then you open the other rice and you're negative and angry. This rice stays good, not spoiled for much longer, where the bad rice spoils much faster. And this is something that the book these kind of examples then go through your mind to be like, really? Could that really be? Because then we know that there are people who, can do incredible things that our rational, logical brains cannot comprehend with, be it people who can sense more of the energy of the earth, be it feeling the water, feeling the vibrations, people who can communicate telepathy, they can send energy healing through prayer or belief to others. And I started reading a book that if I have read them before, they would probably be part of my list because this author has been on my list for a while, Joe Dispenza, who goes with the woo-woo to another layer, but again, doctor. And in his books, it's all about like you can heal like ridiculous amount of damage, like in his example of having his spine completely shattered and they just were thinking he's never going to be walking. And through the power of visualization and the power of positivity, he just healed himself and so many people. So what we now call woo-woo, I think very soon will be seen as woo-woo, will be seen as, well, this is science.
Yeah. Well, science always needs to be discovered by somebody, doesn't it? So it's just there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been discovered yet.
Exactly.
Maybe hold off on getting all your crystals just yet.
Well, they're nice decoration, so why not?
Yeah. Well, I normally ask people which book they would recommend, but you've already done that in Outlive by Peter Attia.
Definitely, number one recommendation is Outlive.
Yeah. So, you've also kind of mentioned this, which is where are you going next with your reading? It sounds like you're riding the woo-woo train a bit at the moment. Anything on the business side that you're looking forward to reading in the future?
So in my business side, I am reading and interested in books about writing. So I am reading a book from Anne Handley, Everybody Writes.
Yeah, that's been recommended a few times on this show.
Yes. Well, it is a very, very good business book. So it's definitely one of the books that's on my current reading list. But I'm also going back to Big Magic from the author of Eat, Pray, Love, which is about creativity and tapping into our creative juices, and again, just unleashing that uniqueness, that weirdness, this creativity. So it's practical things like Everybody Writes, which is a very practical guidebook to write. And then it is still a bit of the magic, but in terms of more of the creativity and practicalities. And then there is the medicine, healing / woo kind of a rabbit hole.
Yeah. Then how do you discover your books? Are you going on other people's recommendations, or do you just see a book, or do you let Amazon just pick them and you think, oh, I'll have one of them?
Yeah, so because I love books, I have people around me who love books. I listen to podcasts about books, and I do have a never-ending wish list. I have never-ending basket on Amazon where there is a networking event, someone mentions a book. There is a blog post, someone mentions a book. There's a LinkedIn post, someone mentions a book. I love people on Zoom when they have their bookshelves behind, because I will be like, what is it on your book? What are you reading? Oh, that book. So, and then it's very much with what just I feel, which book really pulls me towards it, because then again on my Audible I will have a wish list, on my Amazon I will have a wish list. And then there's just books that are like coming in your face. And books like The Big Magic that I'm reading now has been on my mind a little bit, kept hearing a bit more about it. And then I was cat sitting a friend's cats for a couple of days, and I saw this book on their bookshelf, so I just grabbed it, started reading, and I was like, can I take this book and finish this book? The same was with The Coaching Habit. I was staying at his house. I was going through their bookshelf. I kind of knew about this book. I picked a couple other books. They were on my wish list, and I started reading this book. I'm like, can I take this book?
Yeah.
That's kind of a thing. People's bookshelves, my favorite thing, or random places that just pay attention, because books grab my attention so much.
Yeah, well, I've got hundreds of books to read from just this show, so I need to compile them all into some sort of ordered thing, because I've forgotten which books I haven't. I've got a long order book. I mainly listen to audio books, but I've got a long queue of books to read. So have you ever been tempted to write your own book? And if you were going to write a book, what would it be on?
That's the question. The question. What would it be on? And it's been for years that people kept coming to me and be like, oh, you need to write a book, or you should write a book. I'm like, what about? Like, what do I have to say to write a book? So I am tempted, but I don't have the idea. And I don't know if that's what's holding me back. It's the fact that I don't have the idea, the big one thing to really I want to share, that I should just pick an idea and just do it and give it a try and see what's going to happen. And then maybe later on the idea is going to come. Or if it's okay to just keep consuming other books and wait, but maybe one day something big will come. And I do hope that I have a book within me. I would love to just be on the other side one day. And it is a ridiculous amount of work. And I know that you've written lots of books and have experience in publishing. It is a ridiculous amount of work, but yeah, it's something that scares me and excites me, and I'm looking forward to see when the future might be ready for me to write a book.
Yeah, one thing I would say, going back to my old self-publishing advice days, is that it's similar. It's some advice I got from somebody doing screenplay on the screenplay course years ago, and they were said, you don't want, the first thing you write, you ideally don't want to be either too long or your passion project. So there is an argument for just, if you think you want to write some really influential book about breathing while eating, making sure your gut's right, or something like that, while marketing, maybe you want to write a smaller book first, just so you learn how to do the whole process of writing a book. But again, it's like, I wouldn't just write a book to write a book, because it's like, I know there are a lot of people I've seen a lot of people who've written a book just to write a book, and it's like, they do it, and then they're like, oh, why has my life not changed? And it's like, well, because you just wrote a book that's the same as Think and Grow Rich but updated, or something like that. So
that's my challenge. If I'm putting all the effort in a book, I do want it to be something unique, something meaningful, not just a replica of something, not just something, that any other person could have done, and there are hundreds of books like that. I do want to feel that there is something that I have uniquely contributed into the world, because, oh my God, there's so many books out there, and I don't want to be adding to the noise. If I'm adding to the volume, that it needs to be something that really has a deep meaning for me, and I'm fully 100,000% convinced that this has to go out. I have to tell whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for being on the show. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you and discover what a marketing therapist is, or talk to you about books, then how can they get in touch with you?
Well, the best thing for them would be to find me on LinkedIn, search
Yeah.
for my name, keep an eye on my title, marketing therapist. You're very likely to see a post about books because I just can't not
Yeah.
talk about books. It's kind of a weekly theme that just kind of it creeps in. My book posts just creep in. It would be lovely to chat about books or life or marketing or business. Happy to connect. So thank you so much for having me. This was fun. Like I'm just so excited, like so ready to just go and something more.
Yeah. And thanks for all the people. A lot of people have watched and dipped in and out. It's like 129 people have watched at some stage, though I don't think they've all watched at the same time. So I don't think they're that famous, but pretty good for Amazon, actually. So thanks
Awesome.
so much for being the guest. And I'm going to end the show if I can remember which stream to end first. I think it's this one. So thanks for the people watching.
Thank you so much.